Hey guys, let's get going! Yay! So, Merry Easter to everybody. If you are not aware, Easter is not a day, although there isn't an Easter day. Easter is a season, and it lasts 50 days. It will end on Pentecost. But, yeah, it is quite the leafy celebration. So get used to Easter for the next, 7-some weeks. Anyway, we were talking about stuff that went on at work. Last week, I had stuff, and things got interrupted, and there were events going on, so I wasn't able to get to a video. Although I will admit, on 2 days, I had got ready to. It was totally in my mind to make the video, and I ended up falling asleep because I was tired. If I did not mention it, so let's talk about this for now. I had to take a sleep test because I had gone to my doctor several weeks ago and told him, oh, I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't breathe because I'm so congested. And he decided that he wanted to get me tested for sleep apnea because he hears wake up in the middle of the night and can't breathe. And of course, to a degree, that describes sleep apnea. So I had to go to this other doctor's office. Didn't actually see the doctor at all. I saw a nurse practitioner while I was there. Was it a nurse practitioner or a PA? I honestly can't remember if it was an NP or a PA. A PA is physician's assistant, if you weren't sure. Those are both considered mid-level providers. Anyway, went to this other doctor's office, and they sent me home with this home sleep study. So normally, if you're going to get tested for something like sleep apnea, they send you to a sleep lab, and you sleep in the sleep lab overnight, and they've got you hooked up to machines and whatnot, and instruments. And there are technicians there, and they watch you sleep overnight, and they make... I don't know exactly what all they do, like if it's up to them to record specifically any movements or things versus just, what's going on with the instrumentation and the fancy machines. Oh, nothing left there. Let's Giga Drain him. There you go. You're dead. Oh, yay! Galley grew to level 47. That is overall a pretty decent level. Can't complain with a bunch of 2s. Attack is really low. Special attack is still not all that great either, but that's okay. It's alright to have a Pokemon that's not all about the offensive stuff. Densetsu, I'm still scared to death of leveling you up here. Alright, let's try it. Psychic. Womp. Oh, jeez Louise. Of course you live. Alright, Ghost. That should kill you. There you go. So, it is really stupid of me to try and level up my Densetsu in that patch of grass, so we're just gonna not do that. We'll find a different patch of grass that's not filled with birds that will kill you. So anyway, yeah, and it costs a lot of money to do those sleep studies because they have a whole laboratory, set up for that purpose. So instead, nowadays you can get a home sleep study, and it is a thing that they strap to your head. It's got a couple sensors that are right up against your forehead, and they measure your oxygenation. And potentially, I'm not entirely sure for the home one, during a normal sleep study, they measure your brainwaves too. They have an electroencephalogram. That was not a very good level for you, Densetsu. Attached to you as well to measure brainwaves so that they can tell which stage of sleep you're in. This might have some small amount of electroencephalogram activity, but I don't know for certain. They don't give me a manual, like, a technical spec sheet when they send me home with the machine, the instrument. I'll talk about that in just a moment. So, in addition to strapping this plastic box to your forehead with the sensors in it, you also have to, it comes with nasal cannula. So those are, if you're ever watching a medical TV show and the person has the oxygen flowing into those 2 little tubes up their nose, that's the nasal cannula. Now here, it's not oxygen going into your nose. It's actually the opposite. They're measuring your breath output using that tube. So in addition to measuring the amount of oxygen and or carbon dioxide you're breathing out, I'm not entirely sure which, it's also measuring just when you're exhaling and when you're inhaling, because I'm sure it's hooked up to a pressure sensor so that it can tell, what your breathing is like, which is very important because the whole point of sleep apnea is it's where you stop breathing. To break down sleep apnea, the sleep means sleep. So apnea, it's A-P-N-E-A. A is a prefix meaning without or not, and P-N-E-A is Nia, and it comes from the same root word that gives you pneumonia. That new, P-N-E-U, and in this case P-N-E-A and whatnot, they all come from the Greek root word for air, and they're also the name of the lungs. And so when you have apnea, you're without breath. You're not breathing. You stop breathing. In the intensive care unit where I work, we hook patients up to ventilators. Those are the breathing machines that actually do all of the breathing for you if we need them to. Yay! And that's, well, I mean, physical attack isn't the best stat for you, but at least it's no ones. And when you're on those the ventilator, the breathing machine, there are certain modes of the ventilator where it's not doing all of the breath work for you. There are certain modes where the patient is the one in control of when they start breathing. But if the patient isn't breathing, the machine will signal an apnea alarm and then kick into gear and make you breathe. And the funny part about that, at least with the ventilators that we use in my unit, there's a whole little jingle that goes off during the apnea alarm. But one part of it is just 3 beats. It goes beep, beep, beep. And in my mind, I can't help myself. I just start singing Weird Al's Another One Rides the Bus. It's like beep, 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 bah, bah, another one rides the bus. And then you have to wait because it doesn't go in line with the song. But it's just those 3 beats just right in a row. They're perfectly spaced for Rides the Bus. Now, I specifically say that that my mind calls out Rides the Bus because the Queen song that is based on is Bites the Dust, and that would be highly inappropriate in an intensive care unit to say another one bites the dust while an apnea alarm is going off. So it's totally not another one bites the dust. It's totally another one rides the bus. Because they're getting out of the hospital and they're taking the bus home. Because I want them to get better. Anyway, so you have this home sleep apnea machine instrument strapped to your forehead, and you have to have it strapped on pretty tight because you can't let it move around while you're sleeping. Because if it comes off of your forehead or shifts out of position, then you end up with poor readings. And it will actually sound an alarm in the middle of the night to wake you up to put the strap back into position, and then you can go back to sleep. So I can tell you from having worn one of these, it's incredibly uncomfortable. Even if you loosen the strap enough so that it's not like crammed onto your head, because when the technician who was at the doctor's office was showing me how to use it, he had measured my head with a measuring tape, measured the circumference of my head, and then set the strap to what he thought, it should be. And he put it on my head, and it felt like it was squeezing, the top of my head off. And I told him, I said, that's way too tight. We're going to need to go down. Ah, see, where's your special attack, Densetsu? That is exactly the thing that we need from you. So anyway, yeah, so we loosened it a couple times, but it didn't come off when I was sleeping, so the loosening of it was perfectly fine. And then, of course, you've got those tubes going up your nose. They sit just inside your nose, but once again, you pull it over, you line it up with your nose, and then in the back of the machine, there's a little strap that you have to then pull down to tighten the cannula so that they stay in your nostril. Because just like if you move the sensors off of your forehead, and it would interrupt the instrumentation and the readings. Oh, it's a ditto! If you were to get those nasal cannula out of your nose while you're sleeping, then you're going to have poor readings once again. So you have to keep them relatively tight, and of course they're poking you in the nose, and it's not a very pleasant sensation. And I guess it would be slightly okay if you slept on your back, because then the only thing that's really out of place as far as the way you normally sleep is just the small strap that's at the back of your head. But I sleep on my side most of the time, and so the sensor box that's on the front by your forehead is up against the pillow, and the strap is up against the pillow, and the nasal cannula, which goes down the side of your head, is also up against the pillow. And so if you shift it all of this stuff gets pulled. And so, like, I remember waking up more than once feeling the nasal cannula tugging on the side of my nostril because I had moved my head in my sleep. You wear it for 2 nights. I don't know I believe if you go in for a formal sleep study, I don't know that you have to stay there for 2 nights. We're going to switch Pokemon because I can't deal with this guy right now. Go Rachel. Excuse me. So, yay, you're paralyzed and you're terrible. And I used Hyper Fang instead of Ice Beam, even though Ice Beam would have killed him just fine. Go back to the Pokemon Center. Whee! But you do it for 2 nights, and they were the 2 worst nights of sleep I've ever had. Like, other than when I'm sick with a fever and, tossing and turning from being ill, by far, these were the worst nights of sleep I've had. Anyway, I turned in the instrument, and then it took them a week, but on Friday last week, they finally called my results in and basically said, you do not have sleep apnea. No evidence of sleep apnea on the report. So, there we go. Now I have a clean bill of health from that perspective, and my doctor can stop bothering me about it. Because I told him when I was there and complained about it the first time that it was allergies and congestion. Because when you have sleep apnea, you don't get up, so a lot of times if you have sleep apnea, you don't wake up enough that you realize you're waking up. It wakes you up enough that you're not having restful sleep, and then you fall asleep during the daytime to try, basically because you're catching up on it. There's a tool called the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. I'm pretty sure it's Epworth. And what it is it's a series of questions, and it tries to ascertain how often are you having these daytime sleepy events. So it says, like, how often do you fall asleep while watching TV? How often do you fall asleep while sitting in a chair? How often would you fall asleep while reading a book? Just if you're in these quiet, still situations, does that lull you to sleep? Because if it does, that means you're probably not getting enough sleep, and it could be due to sleep apnea. So usually when you come in and complain about being really tired, not being very rested, they'll give you this Epworth Sleepiness Scale to measure, how sleepy are you? And then if you score enough points, then that says, okay, we should probably do a formal study and see if you are... I should probably not do these guys over here, because everybody else on my team can take on the slightly higher experience point totals of this set of monsters. Pocket monsters, if you will. So they gave me my sleep worth score. They give me the little test when I get in there, and my score is 0 to 1. There's one question that I'm like, yeah, sometimes I've fallen asleep while sitting, laying in bed before bedtime reading or something like that. I forget the exact question I answered yes to. But there was one question I answered yes to, so I had 1 whole point. And when the nurse practitioner came in to talk to me, she's like, it doesn't seem like you're having much by way of symptoms. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I told this to my doctor that, the only problem I'm having is I'm waking up in the middle of the night because of congestion. Oh, I was saying about the sleep apnea. When you wake up in the middle of the night, it's usually not enough that you realize you're waking up. It's only slightly waking up. Whereas for me, I was actually waking up, and then I'd go blow my nose, and then I'd be able to breathe again, because it was all congestion due to my allergies. Susasudio is not evolving. But anyway, that is done. Now we want to talk about the difference between an instrument and a machine. So machines, Well, let's talk about where this comes from. When I was in undergrad, one of the courses that I took as part of my education in forensic science was called instrumental analysis. And the professor who taught it was an instrumental analyst. Like, that's what he did all the time. He was an analytical chemist, I believe, but his specialty was the instrumentation, and he gave talks on the instruments and all kinds of fun stuff. But anyway, he was very clear that if you ever called one of his instruments a machine, he would fail you right out of the class. And that is because machines do work. Machines are things like a wheel, a ramp, a pulley, a simple wedge. These are machines. A lever. They are simple physical constructs that allow work to be done more easily. An instrument, on the other hand, is a device that makes a measurement. It takes a measurement of something. So, for example, you might have a UV spectrophotometer. UV stands for ultraviolet, so it uses ultraviolet light. It shines that light through the sample of whatever you put in there. It's usually a liquid. And depending on what kind of chemicals are in that liquid, and even the liquid itself, they might absorb certain wavelengths of ultraviolet or visible light. You can have a UV-vis spectrophotometer as well. Depends on, whatever wavelengths you're using. There's also an IR spectrophotometer, which uses infrared light. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, certain wavelengths of light will be absorbed by the sample, and so the detector on the opposite side of the sample from the light isn't going to detect those wavelengths of light because, they're being absorbed. And so then you get a reading out the other side, and as the light moves through the spectrum that you are using, there will be certain wavelengths that quote-unquote drop out, and you can use that information to help identify what's in the sample. That's not doing work, that's measuring a very specific thing. And so that measurement is what makes that an instrument and not a machine. There's all kinds of different instruments, but the thing that's important to it is they take measurements. And so when I say that a ventilator is a machine, there is a machine in the ventilator, and that machine is what does the work of breathing for you. But at the same time, a ventilator also has instruments in it, because it has to measure the amount of air that's going in, the flow rate of that air, the pressure behind that air, the amount of air that's coming back out. And then, of course, you're hooked up to other instruments that are measuring your heart rate, and your blood pressure, and your oxygenation, and all kinds of fun stuff. So there's a bunch of instruments that are also bundled together on a ventilator. Oh, that is the crap level. 5 speed is awesome, but man, I don't want to give up all of the rest of that for 5 speed. Poor Pokemans. Alright, one more. Let's get Vanderhuge in here. Birdbrains still needs to get a level, but we'll deal with that. You're out of PP, which is why we had to take you out. There we go. What else can I talk about real quick about stuff? At work today, I went to a what's called, so there's this thing in businesses now called lean. And lean is essentially identifying wasteful wastes. Any kind of process can be improved to cut down on the amount of time it takes, the amount of resources it takes, etc., etc. And by finding these wastes and correcting them, you make your business more efficient, you save more money, etc., etc. So a lot of businesses are doing lean. Now, lean was most popular, at least in America. It started off with manufacturing, and it was called 6 Sigma. And that Sigma is an abbreviation for a standard deviation. And the most common one, if you learn stats, is that about 96% of all things in a standard, a normal distribution or a bell curve fall within plus 2 sigma and minus 2 sigma. But that's not good enough in manufacturing. You can't have only 95, 96% of stuff that you're manufacturing fall within the correct parameters. You need a lot better than that, because let's just say it's 95%. That means 5% of the time it's out of parameter, and that means that it is green. You know, you're not even worth switching Pokemon. You're just a Spearow. Get out of there. That means 1 out of 20 objects that you create are out of range. 6 sigma is something like 1 out of every million, or something around that. So they work on making these processes efficient and manageable for manufacturing to that degree of precision. In healthcare, we don't do manufacturing to a precision. Everything's a little bit more nebulous. And so they work on what's called lean. And I was in training for lean today for 2.5 hours. And but that's a story for another time, apparently. Until then, bye-bye.